the audience. Really understanding how an American or Western audience is going to take in information about Iraq and how to get them to be able to do so. And I think that is in direct complement to this discussion. I think that one of the premises I started with in '98 during the sanctions period with Iraq. So personally, given that I'm American and Iraqi, there was already one war that wasn't much represented in literature, especially in the theater. At the time that I was studying to become an actress and was working professionally, I couldn't find a play where I could play an Iraqi woman. It didn't exist, and that's the reason why I even started writing in the first place. But during the sanctions time period, what I really felt was there was a decade, if not 13 years, where the stereotypes were increasing. Our lack of understanding about Iraq was increasing. And I found I was in a perfect position because if I just walk on stage, I've pretty much done the job. I mean, I literally could just walk on and say hi and go home. I mean, you have a blonde girl from Michigan who's half Iraqi, and we're wondering if the two can be reconciled, and we go, oh, well, yes, they can, see you later. You know what I mean? That's pretty much it. Then if I said anything at all, then we were having an even deeper discussion. But I pretty much said it all with just walking on stage. I used the abaya, the black robe that many Iraqi women wear. I used it for the American eye. I used it because, I mean, as you both know, Americans are absolutely obsessed with the Orientalism of women in the Middle East. So always the question, if anybody found out I was Iraqi, was, oh, did you wear a face veil when you go? Oh, does your family do that? What? And the fact that we could be having two wars and still the discussion is about a face veil or not, or an abaya or not, made my head explode. So I thought, we've really got to address this. We've really got to get in there and then get over it. So I used it as a prop. I used it as the only prop in the whole play. The first woman, or one of the women, wears it traditionally, and then she's washing the floor with it, and then it's a baby, and then it's all these other things. And it's a piece of useful material. And then we're past that. So these are these ways that we were working with an American audience. But I think that ultimately I wanted to get in and out of that discussion really fast so we could get to the real discussion, which for me was about creating a very sacred place to show the complexities of what was going on in Iraq, of the Iraqi psychology, and allow for Americans to feel their own complexities and emotions around the issues of this war. And that wasn't happening anywhere. It wasn't happening in the theater. There was no place to have these discussions. Deborah Amos, who has lived in the Middle East and reports from the Middle East all the time, came to the show to get information. During the periods of 2003 to about 2007, you could not get the information. We didn't know what Iraqis were thinking or feeling. It was too dangerous for certain. I mean, you were translating, right?
Yes.
So I mean, the stories were imperative. And recently, I mean, I've had waves of how 9 Parts of Desire has continued to hit a public or hit an audience. And what I think is really interesting is, I mean, I have military men and women, no, not women, military men writing me all the time trying to have a further discussion, wanting to read the play, wanting to talk, anybody that's seen it. And that begins years worth of email correspondence. So the fact that I could email a play to Marines in Baghdad and all they want to do is talk to me, or not in Baghdad, all around Iraq, talk to me about Iraqi people in depth, what they think, what they feel, why this, why that. It's extraordinary to be in that kind of a position. The other thing I think that's really extraordinary is a 17-year-old Iraqi boy who was studying here his senior year of high school in Duluth, Minnesota, a few months ago. Like, this is just a modern example. I wasn't even doing the play. It was being done at a college there, St. Scholastica College in Duluth, Minnesota. He sees the play. He emails me 3 pages of heartfelt, since I came here and since I've been doing this, and he says, I've been water skiing. I've been having a good time. I've been, he said, and I've been feeling guilty the entire time. His father and his brother were blown up in a suicide bomb. And he says, finally your play spoke to me. He says, I've honestly been toying with, should I stay here? Should I go back? I want to do something good for my country. What can I do? It's amazing to be in a position where a 17-year-old is literally asking me in an email, what can I do for my country? Honestly, I mean, I was so startled. The power of theater. I honestly didn't know how to answer him. He wanted to go home and start a social movement. And he wanted to know which ones I thought he should be looking at. I wasn't prepared for that. I mean, I don't know how to answer that. That's what I'm saying. I got asked questions I didn't know how to answer. When I was at Arena Stage, one of the best things that happened was that production happened in 2006. So it was right during the midterm elections. And from an American point of view, it was right during what they thought was this Civil War. So from the Pentagon and the State Department, the big buzz when they came to see the show is, okay, what do we do and how do we fix it? I thought I'd get to DC and everybody be jaded. I didn't know what DC was. I didn't know how people would take in the information. And it was wildly exciting. The talkbacks were full. Nobody left. So hundreds of people were at the talkback. 6'4" men from the Pentagon were crying in my arms. Crying. I mean, weeping, shaking, weeping. This and this is what I feel, and how did this happen? And then the discussion started. Same with people from the State Department. So I think that my experience with this work is like that. I've done elements of the show in very big sort of theatrical venues. Then I've been in a library in Cincinnati, Ohio, for a group of card-carrying Republicans who championed it. I think that what is important to me and what I've discovered, and I have a lot of biases, so you'll learn those, is I really didn't want a piece of agitprop theater, and I didn't think we needed one. I thought what we needed was a place where Americans did not feel that the material was coming at them in any sort of hostile way, so all their guards could fall and they could really get the human story. I felt that Americans were absolutely starved and hungry to really hear what Iraqis thought. And if we could get them in a situation where their guard was down, where they didn't, I mean, when I was in 2003 and 2004, what was so hard was that if anybody in America felt that they would be against the troops if they said they were not for the war or curious to hear about the Iraqi situation. I mean, this was a very hard time. By 2006, there's a civil war and we've screwed it up. I mean, that's a very huge 2-year difference between people not even being able to, Democrats not being able to say, you know what I mean? So it's getting a play that could last for a decade and sort of work on people in a different way over a course of time was something I was very interested in doing. The biggest thing I think I did was I allowed the audience to be endowed as a character. And the character of the audience was a beloved person who was trusted, who was warm, who was welcome, and who was in the room. So when the Iraqi women were talking direct address to the audience, because it's a one-woman show, so they were looking at the audience, the scene partner, the audience, reflected back, was somebody who was beloved and in their living room already. Like having tea, like being fed dinner, like it's a week later and I love you already, so now I'm really going to tell you this stuff. So even when some of the material was harder politically, there was always that level of warmth and love. And I think it's made a huge difference. I think it's made a huge difference in how an American ear could take in information about a Middle Eastern culture. And I think that's something we really need to think about when we're creating our theater here. Yes?
Have you done it in Iraq?
I haven't.
Do you want
I've
to?
done it in the Middle East. I've done it in Doha.
Do you want to?
Parts of me would say I would love to, but mostly I would rather see Iraqi women doing it. I would rather see it in Arabic, in Iraqi dialects, with Iraqi women performing. If I perform the American character in English, that could be really exciting. I think what's exciting about that, and it's something I was talking about with a 17-year-old when he was just visiting me last week, the Iraqi 17-year-old, and with various Iraqis that I've been talking to that have been looking at the play, is that, and this is something that's new to me, new in thinking, that Iraqis would feel so represented if they knew this was this big hit play in America that all these Americans had seen and loved and felt, and they, that would be shocking almost. They loved that, they believed in that, they supported that. The Jews put the money up for that, you know what I mean? Like in a way, that could be it could be an exciting conversation. The American character, especially, being an Iraqi American who talks about seeing it from the outside. And I think that one thing that really came up for me in how we start to bridge when we do theater in both places, I mean, I really feel like the Arab American population of artists in America is absolutely key. I just don't think you send a bunch of Americans over to Iraq and say, let's go at doing some theater. You can't. I think the genre of Arab American theater that has blossomed since September 11th is the voice. They are the bridge. It's in their body. So anybody in the Middle East sees somebody and knows you're half and half and wants to hear a bit from you. I mean, they're still going to look at, they're going to be push-pulled, and that's it. That's it. They'll be, I love you, I don't want, they're going to want that, and that's going to bridge the gap. And then, okay, we're talking a decade from now or 2 years from now, whatever. Then it's another whole phase of exchange. But I really think on both sides, it's the havesies that are the people we need to mine in these conversations, who has what skills and how to do that. I mean, when I was in Iraq, what was in '93, what was really interesting to me, it was post one war. But the mentality hadn't yet been, you are your government. So people saw a blonde person, what are you, who are you, why are you here? They were curious. As soon as they found out my father was Iraqi, oh, you're our daughter, come in. You need this, oh, you need that. We'll tell you everything. We'll tell you what you need to know about your people. Oh, it was suddenly, they were exploding with what they wanted to say because I was from there. So they had to make sure I was from there by telling me everything about what it was to be there. I also think another idea about this going into communities, and it's because so much of my work is based on talking with people. I don't do documentary theater, but I do my research, I guess, like one would. I'm just a constant mining people for what their stories are. I think you go into the community, to the common person, and you start really talking to them, and you start getting their story. And then within 2 days' time, you say, this is your poem. Maybe it's poetry. Maybe it is an art form that's closer to the bone for them. What if we go into a community and we create poems of those people that have just had a loss, and then you put them up next to each other and they all watch it, and that's my story? I mean, I really think I think the question should be really, how do we inspire Iraqis to be writing? So back to, do I want to do my play? Sure, but I want Iraqis to be doing it. I want, if they feel empowered by it, and if they don't, let's forget about it and give them something they feel empowered by, because that's all that matters. What I've written really works over here, and it works in translation. I've seen it in Greece, I've seen it in Brazil, it's been in Sweden, like, it definitely works. But I think the point is, how do we empower the Iraqi voice?
But your play, was it, you said it's, the main is the Western audience, right? You're written for the, is it informative play, right?
I wanted it to be absolutely embraced by Iraqis. But I knew the reality is that Iraqis don't go to the theater in droves. They just don't.
Yes,
So it didn't matter. Like, the Iraqis that I got there felt so represented by it. I mean, the Iraqi ambassador has told me, hands down, he says, Heather, you can do in an hour what I've basically spent years trying to do. And so they use it. They go listen to a monologue from her, because I'm like the warm-up act, in a way. Like, you can get somebody to immediately have a heart-based, be in their heart, and then they can start hearing the other information. And that's really hard for an ambassador to do. How is he gonna, how do we get there? So Iraqis do love it, embrace it, but there's not a huge Iraqi-going population in America, theater-going population in America.
No,
I'm just going to
meaning
interrupt for
in
one
Iraq.
second.
Oh, in Iraq, yeah.
This